Hi, I'm Chris Thomas. Today we're going to cover the basic empty hand curriculum of Ishinryu. We'll go through the upper body exercises, the 8 empty hand katas, show you bunkai, application, ways of using the techniques. I'll be talking fast and running through stuff really quickly to give you a lot of ideas. Please don't get the idea that this is the correct way. This is where a lot of people got into trouble. Somebody showed them something once and they said, now I know what it's for. It's more important to see here's what the move is for, as a window into a lot of different possibilities. So don't get stuck with one thing, this is what it means, that's it. You know, allow one thing to give you an idea for something else, to kind of flesh out. Now, I learned my Ishinryu from Steve Young, and it's important to acknowledge that. Even though the way I do Ishinryu today, it reflects my understanding of the art. It doesn't reflect even what my teacher taught me. I mean, it's how I do it. And which is one of the reasons why on this tape I'm not going to take any time to teach you the katas. I'm going to assume that you're going to learn them on your own from your own teacher, and they're going to teach it to you however it is they teach you. And that way is just fine. I'm not going to make an argument for my way of doing the kata. It's just how I do the kata. So just so you understand that, the point is to have a lot of ideas and a lot of input. You're also going to hear me talk a lot about pressure points. I'm a student of George Dillman, and so I do Dillman method pressure points. And it's helpful if you become more familiar with those concepts. But hopefully you'll see the techniques that we've done, the techniques that we show on the tape, are techniques that just work, that you don't really have to know pressure points for them to work, but then you'll see that if you know pressure points, it's even better. So that's what we hope will happen, that you'll see a good technique that you want to do, and then you'll also want to learn more about how to make that technique better. You want to learn the pressure point material, and you want to learn the deeper secrets of the art. I need to also just kind of acknowledge and thank the people who are helping me today, my hapless Ukis, who are Shad Yankee and Chris Martingilio, and Chris especially because this is his school that I'm in, and he kindly has allowed me to use his space to do these tapes, and allowed himself to be beat on all day long. So I hope that you learn something from this, but I hope you never take my word for anything, and instead use it as an invitation to study on your own, to think on your own, to come up with your own ideas, to have your own suggestions, think of your own possibilities, and just recognize that in the end, if you're ever attacked, Tatsuo Shimabuku is not going to appear and fight for you. You've got to fight for yourself. And that means the art of Ishinryu has to be your art. It has to be your Ishinryu, not Tatsuo's Ishinryu, not your teacher's Ishinryu. It has to be your Ishinryu. And that being the case, if it's yours, if you own it, then it will always work for you. Thank you. What are called the upper body exercises. Tatsuo Shimabuku, he got them from Gichin Funakoshi, actually. He borrowed something that Funakoshi called Tenno Kata. And Tenno Kata is just, it's Churanuke, Joranuke, then reverse like that. And then it goes Geidan Barai, Gyakuzuki. And it goes through the same, basically the same sequence that you see in the upper body exercises. It's just done kind of in a different, in the Shotokan style. And the only thing that's really different is number 10, where in Ishinryu we kind of do this. The Shotokan version was like this, you know, but it was basically the same technique. So that's where he started with. And then he picked up and he kind of added some other stuff later. So as I cover this material, every so often you'll hear me sort of reference where it's coming from. But for the most part, I'm going to assume that you know them. And so I'm not going to talk too much about how to do them, just what they're for. A lot of times when we begin, we always kind of do that thing where we bring our hands to our hips and go from here, which is of course stupid. No one would ever fight like this. You know, you're going to get in a fight, you're going to go. Yeah, no one would ever do that. So the question is, what are we doing? Why would we do that? So I'm going to start with a technique that sort of covers this motion of bringing the hands up, kind of crossing each other and then back. Can I have that? In a society where you're armed, if I was going and reaching for my sword, it would be very makes sense for him to grab me, to try to keep me from drawing my sword. And so that's where you start. A lot of times wrist grabs in the martial arts come from the fact that you're going for a weapon and somebody's trying to stop you. Now there's a lot you can do from here. You know, there's all kinds of quick things you can do, but I'm going to give you something that starts with where we are. It uses the Ishinryu fist in particular, and it uses this, this motion of bringing the hands to the hip. It's not like this. As he grabs, you take this hand, bring it up under his wrist this way. See how it catches that? And this hand comes, I just step forward on his foot and then punch into the body. So it's a real simple motion. Let's do that from the other side so we can get that detail. So I reach, he grabs here, so I'm going to come this way. I'm using the tip of my Ishinryu fist, and I'm catching it right on and this is a great way to get to first pressure point. This is a point called the Shinmon, which is the gate to the heart, or heart 6. So it's right under the bone right there. So I just touch that with the Ishinryu fist there and do this. It comes up into my body and puts him in an awkward position. I step on his lead foot. There's no point in stepping if you're not going to step on something. And then fire the punch right in there. And where I'm going actually is right up here into the side of his body, because especially when I'm on this side, this is the heart side of his body, so his heart is vulnerable here, and I'm activating a heart pressure point. So that becomes like the first very simple, I go, whoa, this way. Just a real simple technique, and it's easy to do fast. Then beyond that, we start with a very quick approach to things, and this is what I call the quick draw. Instead of thinking here, what you do is you imagine a punch is you're drawing a gun, like a fast draw. So you're drawing a gun this way. The situation is this guy's coming at me and he starts to pull his hand back, he's going to punch me. And what I have is that warning and only a certain amount of time. So what I want to do is beat him to the punch. And I can use either right hand or left hand. So one of the things that happens when you go fast is you sacrifice penetration for speed, just so you know that. So he comes up, I try to beat him. Whoa! I can hit him, but I can't really get a lot of solid power. I'm not going to knock him down with that. So I need a way to make sure that he falls down, because that's not necessarily going to be a stopping punch. So what happens is, because he comes in, I put my foot on his foot. And by doing that, you see how that same punch caused a great amount of unbalancing in his body. Now, it was a very light touch. I didn't put any pressure on his foot, and he had to slide his foot out from under. If you do the same thing and lean a little bit harder so he can't escape, see what happens? Now he's really vulnerable. And from here, it's a real simple matter to finish him off with just kind of anything, because he can't go anyplace. And that leg is now vulnerable. Now this applies to the first 4 techniques: straight punch, reverse punch. And the difference between the chest level, the Chudan level punches, and the Jodan level punches is mostly a matter of time. So he pulls that hand back, and I come in here, boom! I got lots of time, so I just hit him really hard. But if he's a little faster, and that punch is coming in, see, I end up ducking behind my own arm. So this first technique, this rising punch, actually becomes a combination of defense. This is what's called the uke tsuki. It's you both receive and strike at the same time. So I'm using this as a guard. This is just brushing inside his arm. I might catch a little bit of his punch, but I'm getting the better of him this way. So it's a very, very simple, very straightforward kind of technique. If we go from there to this motion here. Now, a lot of times in the very, very basic level, what happens is we kind of do what's called one-handed. So you need to know that there's 2 ways of doing all of the traditional ukewaza. One way is to do them the way you kind of learn it first, which is like this. And the other way is to do it this way. So one-handed and two-handed. One-handed is taught first because it's easier to learn. So if we begin with a kind of one-handed approach, then what we end up with is, for example, he grabs me, and he's going to throw a punch at my head. And it's like, oh, crap, I'm going to get hit in the head. So what I do is I do my one-handed set this way. This becomes how I receive his punch. And I'm kind of very intentionally want to cross all the way over his arm. Notice that the hand that's not doing anything is holding and pinning him. And then from here, I'm going to bring my elbow down on his arm this way to control him and lock him up, and then punch. And notice how now his neck is right in front of me. So this punch goes right into his neck. So that first technique, this is the set. And just going to drag that puppy. And understand that when the punch comes in towards your face, you're going to do this. You know, we want to look cool when we do martial arts. You know, like, oh! But the reality is it's kind of like, ah! But that's okay, because once he's crossed this way, it's very easy to just come down here. Now, one of the key things is that as I drop down, I want my elbow to come over his arm here to control his body this way. But if I can, I'd like my forearm to keep controlling his forearm. This ties him up completely. And then my stance is a little teeny bump right here. It's almost incidental. Now, once I'm in this place, then all I need to do, I can keep his hands tied up with both, one hand ties up both his, and there's my short Ishinryu punch right into the throat. Now, a similar idea what I just did was what you might call inside line. Anytime I kind of work here on his body, that's inside line. If I go out here, that's outside line. This is kind of the same principle, but it's outside line. So he's throwing that punch. I come here, whoa. I receive the technique this way. Take it down here. Notice now I'm really using my leg on the outside edge of his leg, so he's trapped. And then from here, I'm going to punch that short punch into his body. Boom, right here. All right, so we put on some armor so I can show you something. One of the things that happens, I get in this position, he throws that punch, I come here, I take it down, I swallow it up, but look at how close I am. It's very difficult for me to hit hard from this kind of range. And so this gets to a question about how do you punch hard. If I do what most people want to do, which is to twist my hip, what happens is I'm too close and my muscles can't transfer the energy. And so people try to do a thing where they kind of like do this, and you can hit pretty hard that way, but what we really want to do is you want to punch without moving the hip, and then at the very last, so you want to kind of punch this way. So notice how my body's at an angle. So I punch here, and then twist my hip once my body has achieved what's a biomechanically advantageous position. So this is a good time for me to kind of explain something. The human body is designed physiologically for pushing. So if you're going to push a car, one of the ways you push a car is you go like this. You push. Okay? You push. And a lot of times when you see somebody push, they put their hands like this and they kind of lean, and you'll see the body get into this position so you can line it up. And sometimes you go this way, but we're designed for pushing. However, our nervous system is designed for throwing. Some of this has to do with you survive by doing lots of work, which is pushing and moving stuff, but also by being able to throw something at the saber-toothed tiger before it eats you. So the guy who pushes really well but gets eaten by the saber-toothed tiger doesn't get to have children. So what nature's done is it's equipped us with these two things. Throwing to escape the threat, pushing to get the work done. But a punch is not a throw, it's a push. But most people, when they go to punch, they punch as if they're throwing. So they punch kind of this way. So you kind of get this, boom, like you're throwing an object. The same as if throwing, but a punch is actually the opposite. It's like pushing, which means you have to have your body in a biomechanically sound position, and then you have to drive. So again, to sort of do this without him for just a second, when I come in here, my body's on a 45-degree angle, so I punch. My hand moves, but not my hip. And then at the end, my hip moves once I'm in a place where I can transfer the force. So he's grabbed me. He's throwing in that punch. I go, whoa! Now I've got him controlled and tied up, very, very close to his body. So I'm not really getting anything yet. But once I'm in this position, I can drive my hip and drive him back. Now, I'm letting him go, and he's got armor on. Imagine he doesn't have armor on, and I hold on to him, which is what the hand comes back to your hip. I hold on to him so he can't escape, and hit and drive my hip. His body will fold in around that punch, and then he'll get seriously harmed. So that's something about punching that you need to understand and have that as a real strong reference in your mind. Now we go on to the next one, which is number 6, Chudan, okay? And notice I keep working from a fairly similar premise, which is the guy's grabbing me because he wants to punch me in the face. Here's the first one. I go, oh my goodness, I don't want to fight. Punch comes in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my hand over into the quote-unquote set ready position. But as I do this, I'm going to hit his arm. And then strike his face. And then again, I'm in this very tight relationship for that short punch. So notice that as I do this is real important. I'm going to bring my arm over his arm because when I strike his face, I can also tuck my elbow and control this arm right here. The key thing is that when I strike his arm, I'm going to strike him up near the elbow, depending on the position of his arm, but in this case, I'm going to be getting him on this muscle right here. And this is a pressure point called large intestine 10. So as he comes in, here, see that body reaction? Notice that I've stepped forward, I'm locked in on him. Now at this point, it's very easy for me to strike into his face, but I also have this little thing right here. And all this before I do the reverse punch. So with one hand, I can conceivably hit 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Okay, so it's a very, very simple motion, but it starts from here. Now that's outside line. Now, if instead I want to do the same idea on inside line, what I'm going to do is grab right here with this hand, the hand that's at the hip. I'm just going to anchor, but when I anchor, I'm going to catch like I'm feeling his pulse, and then I'm going to pull his pulse up towards his wrist this way. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up, this is a lung meridian point. This way. Lung aim. So he grabs me, I grab his wrist, I get that reaction from there. Then, right up here near his elbow, right at the crease of his elbow, there's a lung meridian point called lung number 5. It's right there. So if I hit that, his head comes forward. So I've got two things that accomplish the same outcome. That brings his head forward. This brings his head forward. Okay, so what happens is this guy grabs me. He's going to punch me. I go, oh crap, because I'd love to be cool, but I'm not. So I go, ah, like this. The first thing I do is my hand comes up, and it's when he pulls his hand back to hit me again that I grab on here, do this, down comes his head, strike here, and then notice where his body is. Now I just finish with a punch. I'm going right into the neck. Now in acupuncture, come over to the other side so we can get this. In acupuncture, the lung is considered a metal meridian. And a metal meridian, when you attack a metal meridian, it makes a wood meridian vulnerable. When I do this, his temple is wood. It's related to what's called the gallbladder. So I strike here into the temple. So now I've gone from metal to wood. Wood makes earth vulnerable. Now in this position, when his head is kind of stretched back like that, what becomes vulnerable next is right there. That's a stomach meridian point, and that's where my punch goes. Now in this case, I'm not hitting with these two knuckles like you think. I'm actually hitting with this part, this front edge of my knuckles here. That's what I'm putting in there to finish him off. You can also do this and extend it with a single knuckle, or you can put two knuckles out that way. And when you do that, you're going to get a very slightly downward motion. So you need a little bit of a downward motion on this technique. So it becomes 1, 2, 3. Now, let me do a kind of what I would call a low-grade technique. The guy grabs me, cross-hand wrist grab. Now what I'm going to do is just, I don't want him to grab me. So I'm going to keep this, I'm going to start with something that's just kind of, hey, this is a sort of nuisance attack, but before it escalates. I'm talking, I've had enough, I go to walk, he grabs me. I go, hey, there's a pressure point in the middle of his arm, it's called lung number 6. If I tap lung 6, it will take his arm off. So I'm going to tap lung 6, and as soon as I tap lung 6, then see how his nose comes forward, I'm just going to come forward and wave at his nose to send him back. So this is actually this part of the next move. So what I'm leaving out is the nukite. Well, nukite is not, everyone goes, you're going to drive your fingertips into him. Well, obviously that I'm not going to do. And it doesn't work anyway to drive your fingertips into people, except for maybe right up here. There's almost no place in the body you can drive your fingertips into. Okay, the eyeballs. That's about it. What a nukite is not actually straight this way. It's actually this way. And it's not a fingertip strike at all. It's actually what's called a yin palm, a soft palm. So what happens is I hit, it's aimed not in the center mass, but a little off center, and as you hit, your hand folds this way. So it's really a kind of push. So what happens here is I take him off here, I go like this, and then I just push him back. This is a very low, kind of low-level application. It's not very fierce. Now let's say he grabs with the other hand, cross-hand grab this way. Now, this motion right here does a couple of things. Notice how when I do this, I imbalance him. See how I've bent him? I've come up towards his face. This causes him to be distracted backwards. I'm on his foot. I'm doing all these things at the same time. Now, when I do this push, I can either push here where it's exposed this way, or if I want to be a little bit nicer, as I bring this across his body, I can just push here on his elbow. And I'm going to use what's called two-way action and a little rubbing motion on his elbow this way, just to kind of hyperextend him. Not to be mean. This right now is a very low-grade application. I'll crank it up in a minute. This way. So this is me just dealing with a nuisance problem. It's like, hey, see here. So here's that motion right there. It's like, hey, just that solves so many problems. And from here, either the elbow or the body, as you see fit. And when I'm hitting the armor, I get only a modest result. But when you hit actually into the body, you get a big kind of oofing noise because you're right in the floating rib right down here. All right, now to crank this up to a higher grade technique, I've been grabbed again, very much like I have before. I'm going to lock up here. Again, I'm going to go, the punch comes in, I go, oh crap, ah. Then as he comes back, I'm going to strike down. I'm going to use the same point again, this long 5 point right at the elbow, this way. And notice how his body's come straight towards me this time. The last time there was a little bit of rotation there. This time he came right at me. And so what I'm going to do is go right to this is a gallbladder meridian. It's right here above his forehead, just above his eye. And I just hit that. Now notice where he is now in this position. So what I'm going to do is when I do this yin palm, I'm going to do it really at the same place again, this way. And that's the result you get. All right, so to do that technique slowly, I go one here, and then I come here, right here. You can see where it's red right now. It's this area right above the eye. It's not in the middle, it's off center. So I strike it one, and when I strike it, I don't strike it up, I strike it with a slightly downward motion, which positions him right here so that when I come with this motion, it's going to the same target. Notice how I've allowed my hand to kind of catch him behind, so I'm not just doing this. I'm actually pulling him slightly forward, so I kind of pull him into this blow just a little bit. All right, so this technique is actually, well, it's lethal. I mean, it's for killing. And you kind of have to comprehend that the whole idea is your life is in danger and the outcome has to be serious. But I'll also show you a version that is not lethal. We'll start with the lethal one. Again, the guy grabs, and notice most people are right-handed, which is why I keep working off the left-hand grab. This is called a stabilization grab. And with a stabilization grab, the thumb side is always up. And you can kind of tell. And it's always a lapel grab, shoulder, or throat. It doesn't really matter which one. But what's going to happen is it's the same problem. This punch is coming into my head. As the punch comes into my head, if I can, I want to engage this arm, but as the punch comes into my head, see how my upper part of my arm near my elbow is going to just kind of catch and engage there. But it's my hand into his face. That's where the real work is being done. I want to come in and as he goes, whoa, this way. Now I've turned his head a little bit, I've covered his eyes, and what this allows me to do is tip his head back and stretch his neck, and then I can strike into his throat. Now if we bring this around to this side, to see the same thing again. So as he comes in, it's, see, right here. This is where the work, that's where if there's a block in here anywhere, it's right there. Though I don't think of this as blocking. This is, see this reaction? This stretching of the throat makes the throat vulnerable. When I punch, I'm actually not hitting with the two knuckles as we normally think. I'm hitting with this knuckle, the knuckle of my little finger, right there. And I'm going to put this a little bit of grinding motion. So notice how I've trapped his arm across his body as I punch up into his throat. So this has only one purpose, which is to stop somebody from breathing. The non-lethal version looks something like this. It's almost the same. I'm going to start out the same way, but when I go to punch, instead of punching up into his face or his head, I'm actually going to take my arm and I'm going to strike with my forearm this way. So it looks like an up punch is actually a forearm strike here. Now, I can bring it back if I want and just tap this way just to kind of finish him off, you know. This is a much softer kind of approach. And then if you just want to punch him in the head, because you can always do that here, whoa, then this can be into the jaw, into the, just up here. I mean, you can just hit and not have it be quite so deadly. But the thing you have to be mindful of is that when you position the head this way and you strike, and you can damage the neck. So this is not intended to be a, you know, one of those techniques where people think, oh, martial arts, oh, it's all peaceful. It's not peaceful. This is not. This is trying to finish somebody off. Now, what you've seen right away is that I intentionally used two parts of my arm at the same time. So I'm actually going to do the same thing again with the closed fist version. It's dealing with it almost exactly the same way. Let's start first on the inside line again. As the punch comes in, I'm going to come here. This time I'm a little bit late. So here I kind of snuck inside his arm, got my hands up there. Now I'm a little late, so my elbow's coming up a bit, kind of up into his arm, and I'm striking with my fist. And again, I might catch a little bit of his fist. So you might see me duck, because I don't really like getting hit in the head. Boom, here. But I'm a little farther away, so when I go to punch, watch my punch is going to grind over this way. So you see, when I punch, I grind over his body. Okay? Like that, to get the body reaction I want. It's because I don't want to lose this. So I don't regard this as something to go around. I regard this as something to control. So as I punch, I want to keep controlling this part of his body. But notice, on the other side, he grabs, I commit, whoa, boom, here, I hit. As I come and punch here, I'm also controlling on this side. Why do you bring your hand back to your hip? That's why. So I'm trying to maintain as much physical contact with his body as I can all the time. And then from here, I don't know, just do whatever you need to do to finish him off. So it becomes a very simple and kind of straightforward entry into this follow-up techniques as necessary. Let's do, on the outside line, because you can do agioke, this is called agioke, you can do this on the outside line. It has a slightly different feel to it. Because then what happens is, I engage his arm here, and when I go to do this motion, I rotate my body. So my elbow actually hits him in the head. Now, depending on how I position this hand, I can hit him, bang, this way, or I can disrupt his balance here, setting him up for this close punch right here. Okay, when we do number 10, I mean, the typical application is guys throwing a punch at your head, and you do this, and you strike. And the one advantage to keeping that in your mind is that there's a sense that whenever somebody throws something at your head, the first thing you do is you go, ah! And so if you learn to go from here to here as sort of an immediate reaction, there's an old saying, a samurai saying, which goes, when startled, step forward. You go, ah, boom, then that's kind of a smart place to be. But let me go ahead and put a little more kind of interesting things in here. Let me start with just kind of playing around. This technique, even though this comes from Funakoshi, this is similar to, there's one of the techniques from one of Tatsuo's teachers, Choki Motobu. He did something called the Kumite Hen, 12 self-defense sequences. And there's some of this stuff in there, actually. There's a very similar idea. So we're going to start with what you might call the sort of Motobu version of it. The Motobu version, you kind of start this way. You go 1, sort of receive this here. 2 is strike. Then another punch comes in, and that's sort of the Motobu version. But you can do that with the sort of Isshinryu version, is you can go 1, 2, and then... So what I did was I received that first one, strike here, and then as the second one comes, I hit it. And then to finish with it, just punch to the body. You also notice I'm on his foot, just sort of routinely finding some kind of contact with his lower body. Another way to play this out is to play it out on the outside line. And I can play outside line in one of 2 ways. I can actually feed this here. Now, notice how both my hands have come up, because when I strike down, I'm going to bring this hand and catch and pull here. Here's now my strike down. But even though I'm going to strike into his face, I'm also going to tap with my elbow on his arm. At this point, I'm up here. It's a large intestine point, the large intestine 14, I think. It's in kind of the hollow of the bicep, just above the elbow. So I come here, bang. And then because I'm on the large intestine, I can tap the stomach meridian on the jaw. And then from there, then you punch. And you can punch, well, into the body, but you can punch right into the chest over the heart. Stomach meridian runs there. You can punch a little more center line, because that's where the kidney meridian is. Or you can just hit him real hard. Because one of the nice things is, if you miss a pressure point, you still hit the guy. So, oh, I missed the pressure point, but I hit him in the head someplace. And, oh, I missed the pressure point, but I still got to punch him in the body. And you can see already his body starting to, you can see him reacting before the punch comes into the anticipation of maybe getting hit. So, outside line, kind of here, whoa. Then down, boom, here, strike. And then from here, punch. See? Now, when it comes to number 11 and 12, which are the Goren Tsuki, the continuous punching, what I want to point out is that I don't actually try to break those down at all. Because to me, what they're indicative of is, do people actually know how to move their body? So I have to show you something about how to move the body. If you watch somebody punch Goren, 5 punch, what a lot of times you see is this. It looks like this, where the hip goes one way while the hand goes the other. Okay? Now, if that happens, nothing happens. The technique doesn't work. Okay, so If I'm doing that sort of go Renzuki where my hip is going the wrong way, okay, I mean, it looks really spazzy, but what's happening is as I'm punching, my body weight's going the wrong direction. So there's nothing there. So if I want to really hit him, what I need is for my body to move. See how my hip and shoulders move together? That means when I do the technique in sort of in the air without actually hitting something, it has to be. Okay, see how the body moves as a continuous unit. So he comes here, 1, that way. So if you focus on that when you're doing 11 and 12, you'll have excellent luck. All right, so number 13, which is this. So let me give you a couple of ways to play with this technique. One way is I've been grabbed here, and he throws a punch here, which I take across my body like I had before, but at the same time, I'm going to strike with this hand. So I'm actually going to do this. So I go, whoa, this way to kind of fold him up. And now this hand is just a trap, and then from here, strike. 1, here, strike. Okay? Another variation is to start out, this punch comes, I go whoop, and as he goes back with the next punch, 1, okay, and then 2. And 2 goes right here into the occipital point. This is gallbladder 20. It's a very useful point. It's if you find that kind of point of the skull and there's a hollow spot next to it, it's right there. And it doesn't take a lot to hit it, especially after you hit the arm first, because this sets it up. Now, I can also do a sort of inside line version, which is, again, he's grabbed me, but I'm going to come this way. So, don't move. So this becomes the first part. I pass it here, but notice how I've come over this arm. This is real critical, to come over this arm. And then I come here this way to control his arm. So I'm doing a kind of a double tap, a brush pass, sometimes this is called, or a hand grab. And a little catch here. And now I can bring this hand down there. And now from here, shuto. Again, shuto in the same target. But another thing you can do, and this is a kind of interesting thing to do, it has to do with something called the alarm points. If instead of chopping this way, I actually palm with the edge of my palm, I'm going to go here, down, and then strike right into the side of the neck right there. It's a 45-degree angle. This sets up that. Okay, so it's kind of a downward feel and then chop. Number 14 is, it's called ouchi, but there's actually 2 versions of ouchi. One is technically ouchi and the other one is called furuuchi. So let's go. This guy puts his guard up. And so as he's got his guard up, he's in this, hey, I want to fight posture. What I need to do is I need to control that. So one of the ways to control that is to take control of his posture. So I've got, with one hand, I'm going to just suppress his hand into his body. And with the other hand, I'm going to grab and pull, or I'm going to hit, smack through his arm. So either one. And now, from this position, all I have to do is rotate my body and strike into the face. Okay? But the key thing here is that I rotate this. It's this motion that's going to do the work. 1, 2. So he's got his guard up. I come in, he's like this way. See, this controls, suppresses. This opens him up. Strike here. Strike here. Another slightly different version. Still the same thing. He's got his guard up. This time what I do is I'm going to come this way to his outside line. Get in close here so I've got a little bump here. And then when I turn right in here. Notice how this brings his body down. And this would be what we call a rabbit punch, back of the head. And then another one, same idea. I'm going to stay on this same outside line. I come in here, I put his hand this way, I push it over because I intentionally want him to see this coming. So I go like this, which he's going to block. And then that gives me something to pull against. But now this strike is coming back. This is furuuchi, where it comes backwards. So what I'm really doing is reaching around behind and coming towards me this way. Okay, so you get this sort of, his guard comes up, I go, whoa, can't see it? Boom. Notice the whole time I'm locked up here, tight on his body. Just for the last one, this motion right here, let me just give you one thing to think about, which is a different way of thinking about it from the usual, defense against a bear hug. A lot of times people will push you, and then you fall back, and they come to push you again, and you put your hands up, and they end up grabbing your hands this way. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab his wrist here, roll this way, drop into a cat stance, and pull. So I end up pulling him into an elbow strike. So it goes 1, 2. See? This can actually be done very quickly. So it's not a small thing. But in the form, you're moving backwards. Well, that's because somebody's pushing you. They got your hands, and they're driving you back. They're going, oh, okay. See? So I just drop into the cat and step back, and he just comes into my elbow. I've got both his hands controlled. One, because he's too stupid to let go. The other, because I've locked it to my body. And this elbow shot right to his neck or his head. Now we're going to break down Seisan kata. All the katas begin with this motion right here, and I actually count that everything between the bows is fighting, so there's no symbolic, karate is my secret, and I come to you in peace, and all that kind of stuff that people like to come up with. To me, this is all fairly practical. And here's a very simple sort of starting place. The starting place is a guy's threatening, so he's got his fist up here, he's threatening, shaking his fist in your face. And this fist represents his fist, okay? And this hand touches, representing my hand touching his hand. Now, specifically what I do is I take right here, it's a point called heart 8. which you find by making a very loose fist and where your little finger touches, that's where the point is. And on the opposite side of that point is a point called triple warmer 3. And in fact, in acupuncture, sometimes they'll put a needle that connects the two, which is another way of saying it goes all the way through your hand. And occasionally they'll put two needles and try to make them touch in the middle. So those points are very closely related. So actually what I'm doing is I'm touching my heart 8 to my triple warmer 3. When I do the move, I actually touch that. Now this is what's called a tell. That is, the kata is telling me that I'm supposed to do that to him. So he's got his guard up, he's gripping. Now if I grab his wrist and I try to bend him back, and he gives me a little resistance, I can, but I have to really work at it. But if I touch my heart 8 to his triple warmer 3, then his wrist gives really easily. To enhance that, I can do one of two things. I can touch either up here on the lung meridian, or remember when you were a kid and your sister, you took her toy and then she wanted it back, she would dig with her knuckle in here. This is a point called pericardium 6. Now it doesn't take a lot there. Just a little bit of pressure on pericardium 6 and then the touch here, and then down he goes. So the very first thing in the kata is you pull this in and go like that, which means I'm supposed to take this, bring it into my body, and then send him on his way. So it's a very, very simple, it's a kind of a low-grade solution to the problem. Just a little thread, just kind of a way to start the form. The next move is to come here. Now at this point, you notice I'm not doing one-handed, but I'm doing two-handed. So what I'm doing is, can you come over this side, please? He's grabbing me. Again, it's the same problem that we've been having. He's grabbing me, he's got this punch, he's ready to punch me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step forward. As I step forward, I'm going to use my C step into his leg. Okay? Now I should mention there's the nice way and the not nice way. The nice way is I keep my foot in front of his foot and tap. See how his foot slides over? And the not nice way is I step on his foot or next to his foot and then do it. And then he can't escape. Now, when you're training, you have to be a little bit careful so that if you have to practice putting your foot next to his foot, but you have to kind of be nice about it and not get too carried away. This hand comes up, this hand comes down, my knee steps in. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The hand that comes down, I'm going to bring it down here on his arm. The hand that comes up, I'm going to tap it up here under his ear. And my knee I'm going to bring in over here. So as he goes to threaten, I'm going to this way. Okay? So I'm going to tap, 1, tap, 2, tap, 3. All right, now here's the thing about that. Let's say I completely mess that up. I go, whoa! First, let's say I completely miss his head, right? I'm so bad I missed his head. Well, if he's punching in my face and I miss his head, I still end up coming with an interception here. Let's say I missed the arm point. I still am controlling this arm. Let's say that I totally mess up on the leg and step and I'm not even there at all. But that's okay because what I've done is I've avoided the hit and I can continue forward in the form, and the next thing I do, tap him with my elbow, tap him with my knuckle, and then there's a punch. So the movement has all of this. It has hit, 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 hit. So it's designed to deal with the problem, what happens if you miss? Well, it's halfway through the form that the work is being done. It's really the first part of the motion where the work is being taken care of. The second half is the backup. I want to talk just for a second about the footwork. So C-step, we spend this time practicing 1, 2. People go, who walks like that? You don't walk down the street that way. You walk down the street like this. Well, it's for fighting. So anytime you're engaged with an opponent, they grab you, you just do a C-step. Now the secret to the C-step is first biomechanics. Biomechanically, I want to come in at a 45-degree angle because the leg is very strong front to back, but it's actually quite weak, 45 degrees. So all you do is just cut that 45 angle and you have a great effect. But in addition to that, there's also a pressure point here and a pressure point here that if I tap them, I get a big response. Now it turns out that on a guy about my size, if I raise my heel, my knee will be right at the pressure point height. So all I have to do is raise my heel and do that. So that's all the step is. The guy gets grabbed, you go, boom! And then as you step out, go for the other foot. And then you can step again. And go after the back leg. So the simple act of stepping is a combative action. So it's for fighting. If we just look at this part of it, the hands passing. Okay? So let's say a guy grabs me with two hands, two-hand lapel grab. So first thing I need to do is I need to get him a little bit closer to me. Well, if he's grabbing me this way, he might be pulling me in. But if not, I can control him on these two pressure points, which are large intestine 10. I can hit it to bring him in here. Now I'm very, very close to him. So I'm going to put one hand up here on his forehead at the gallbladder. And I'm going to come over, it's over here, but it'll be right on this side. This is the stomach meridian. And I'm just going to connect those points. Okay? Just to get a nice little response. Just to connect these 2 points. And then the next thing, the hands go like this, and then this way. Which means after I strike, so I bring them tight, I strike here, and then, you okay? Okay, so it was 1, 2. And the next action is pulling, which was me keeping him from falling over. I guess that's what the part for your friend. Now, guy's throwing a punch, I go, whoa! Okay, so that's me getting out of the way of the punch. I got to control that punch, then I can strike up into his face. So the key thing here is as he punches, I suppress the punch, grab the punch here. Notice how my elbow controls this hand. This is really key. Now I can step forward and strike. I can strike again, pull, and as I pull, I want to try to control his arms as much as possible. And if I haven't knocked him out and he's still standing, I'm just going to go ahead and use my C-step to knock him down. Here's the kind of situation where a guy is he's doing that initial reach for me, and I go, whoa! So now I've kind of gotten out of the range of that reach. Now I'm going to step in, and as I step in, I'm going to step outside him, and I'm going to snake this hand up this way, and as I come back, I'm going to catch on his eyes, pulling him down here, stretching him back. And I'll give you this on another angle in just a minute. And then what comes next is a strike here, which the form, what I'm doing is this, this, this. So he reaches for me, I go, whoa, put it here. That's all of that out, turn, grab. And you can grab right here at the tops of the eyebrow ridges. Very common for me to use that. In his case, what I've done is I put my thumb onto a point called bitong to control his head that way. I have my knee in his back, and he's stretched out here. So when I bring hand back to my hip, when I stack hands, what I'm actually doing is striking. I'll hit either into the jaw, or I'll tap. This is all stretched out, so a little tap right there. You see that body reaction from that small tap. Boom, this way. In the form, from here, I look this way, and I do this. So here's what's going on there. Guy grabs, and what I do is I'm going to grab his wrist this way, right in the meat of the thumb. I find the middle of the bone. I'm going to dig my finger in there, and I'm just squeeze and press. So I'm going to go here, and as I do that, I'm going to take, whoa, this way. This is just a joint technique. Now, if he's going to punch, if he's getting ready to punch here, and I go like this gets me out of the way. I'm even ducking, you know. So sometimes when I do the form, I'll actually have a little bit of a duck, but in real life, it might be a really big duck. But I want that so that if he does punch, it just goes way over my head. From here, I'm going to just use this hand to control, punch with this hand. Just punch, strike, strike. So again, this is one of those points where it almost doesn't matter what I do, because when I step in here and just drill this puppy into him, if I miss every pressure point there is but still hit him in the head, I get a really nice result. But considering the location, it's real easy for me to just a small shot. So one of the things to know is that the great thing about a good pressure point application is it works even when you screw up, but when you don't screw up, it works really good. And where'd he go? Oh, he's down here. That means instead of punching him, I'm going to kick him. And a kick starts as a knee and continues as a foot. So it starts out as a knee strike, and then as he falls away, you just keep driving your leg up into him. So the movement is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, here. This is a slightly different situation. Same basic idea. Instead of grabbing me with this hand, he's grabbed me with this hand. So the first thing I want to do is, my initial reaction is I'm dealing with this arm. I get that punch I've got to deal with. So the way I'm going to take care of that punch is kick that leg. That makes it so he can't punch me. Now I'm going to turn his wrist here and bring him right to my hip. So what you have is, you have this movement, stack hands, stack hands. So you have it sort of like bookends. So the first stack hands represents, I've been grabbed on this side, I go here, 1, 2, bam. The second stack hands is I've been grabbed here, the kick goes with the second stack hands. So it can become kick, punch, or I skipped the punch the other times and just went kick, joint. And as you do this, you want to just make sure you get everything bent here, bent here. And the key is I'm not actually putting pressure back. The pressure is going this way towards my hip. Okay? All right. So now we continue. There's a sequence that shows up, which is this: 1, 2. So you see this kind of, and it's very particular how it's done. The back foot turns out as you do it. So it's this way. And the reason that, what that tells me is that I'm trying to get something out of the way. The only reason I would move my back foot like that is if something is coming at me. So what this tells me is that he's got this leg forward, he's grabbed me, and he's trying to knee me. Ah! Okay? That's how you get out. I mean, you're getting out of the way in a knee strike. Whoa! That means that as he does this, I got to take this hand, I'm going to use the rotation of my body and punch him in the knee. I'm punching inside his leg at the pressure point that I was getting when I was C-stepping. Okay, right here. See, and I'm not thinking punch, so I'm not going. Ugh. What I'm doing is almost just locking my arm to my body and turning my hip, which gives me this big effect where his body's turned away, and then from here I just bring my hand up and strike. Okay. So it's not even a particularly big action. The other thing you can do is you can treat this with a slightly different energy. Punch comes here, and I go boom this way. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn at a different point in the motion. So in the first, what I just did in the first application, as that thing came in, I turned here and then struck. Now I'm going to turn afterwards. So I take this, control it. Now what I'm going to do is turn and drop. And I do this so that I can control and hit hard into his body. So I'm using body English to control my opponent. Again, notice the contact I'm creating with the foot. I'm not disengaged ever. Here. I've got this tight contact here. I'm up against him, my foot right next to his foot, my knee on his knee, so that when I go to hit him. All right, so we come to this sequence that looks like this. And you see all kinds of, I don't know, people go, oh, they're throwing a punch and you do this. And I really kind of hate turning my back on guys unless I'm controlling them entirely. So here would be a case of controlling. This is a same side wrist grab. It might even be with 2 hands. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this way. And as I turn this way, what it does is that actually gives me his finger. So this initial motion right here, which frees his hand, also gives me control of his fingers. And now from here, I can slip a hand behind him this way and get a lot of real painful control. Okay? Now, I recommend when you do this that if you can, you try to get a couple of fingers. Get 2 for good measure. As he comes clean, you come here too, and then you actually have to reach around just a little bit and just catch. Now, what I've done is I've got 1 finger, just so you see this, but I've got 3 bends. The first bend is his wrist is bent back towards him, like I'm doing a chicken wing, but that's not where the pressure is. The second bend is that his little finger is bent back this way, but the third bend is that I've bent his knuckle that way. See, and so I'm putting a slight rotation. So I'm bending back, rotating inward this way. So you get all of that at the same time. Now that's a chicken wing, as opposed to this that most people do. If you catch just that little bit of finger, then you have a huge amount of control. Now if I do the same technique off of this grab, so the cross hand grab, what I'm going to do is here. The difference is, cross hand, notice how he's got this leg forward now. So as I hit my cat stance, let's start with the cat stance. I'm going to step behind him this way, and I hit my cat stance. So the first thing I do is I go, oh, cat stance. This gives me control over his body. As I turn, this is going to allow me to come up right in here and catch his finger. There we go. So now, and I've got great control over his body at this moment. change fingers, just for good measure. And then from here, you just beat him up. You just hit him however you want. Sorry, cross hand. Now, if you want to catch a bunch of fingers, you can do that. You can take him this way. Okay? So I start out by dropping his weight, but then I do that. See how this carries his body around? Now, the next move in the form is to do this, but that doesn't necessarily mean over there. It can mean there. Okay? So where I send, when I go from here to here, it's about chasing where he goes. So where he goes, cross hand. Where he goes may vary a little bit. If I step on his foot and come up here and then send him sort of that way, then I might have to chase him in this direction. If I take him here, now I got to chase him that way. So the movement of the form means to chase. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to go in that direction. Here's a great common technique. Guy has his guard up. You see this a lot. You go low, so he brings his hand down, and over the top. And the difference between, there's a common form found in Silat and found in Filipino martial arts, where you go 1, 2, and you do this trap hand strike up, and then he blocks, and then you do this. So you get this sequence which goes 1, 2, 3. It's a very, very common sequence. And then you can shortcut that sequence. You shortcut it this way. 1, 2. Now watch this. 3. So you hit and you use the forearm. This in Muchimi we call this in Okinawa martial arts, where you control and hit at the same time. And then we can shortcut that again by sort of one-handing it. So what we do is we go here this way. So as I come in with this initial motion, I don't break contact here. I press in with my elbow, press over his forearm and strike. So you get this sort of one-handed rolling technique. Notice how I keep going on his foot every time. I go, whoa. And this is why you have this motion where you kind of ride in with the technique. You're sort of riding in on the opponent. The low hand, and I'm not trying to avoid this. I'm actually trying to engage his hands, follow him up, little strike. Now, the presumption, of course, is that in Okinawa he's got a top knot, and I'm supposed to grab his top knot. He doesn't have a top knot. So what I have to do with a guy who has no top knot and actually not a lot of hair is I'm going to have to grab his ear, and I have to twist his ear this way. So let me cover in careful detail the twisting of ears. There's a nerve that comes up into the ear this way. And if you take an ear and you pull like this, you can actually, if you pull really hard, you can pull an ear off. But this doesn't hurt that much. But if you take this nerve and you stretch the nerve that way, then on some people you'll get pain, but even on people who it doesn't hurt, you get body reaction. And in fact, if you watch this eye, you see his eye twitch. That's the nerve reacting. So what I do is it's like I'm making a fist, and I kind of I sort of make this motion, make a fist, and I make that motion. That turns his head. Now the form, if it's his top knot, I just grab and I pull here. With his ear, I have to turn and pull down more this way. Notice the position that puts him in. So the next thing I'm going to do is just ride in on him. 1, 2. Okay, so he's got his guard up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this sequence right here, which is this way. He's got his guard up. I'm going to engage his guard. Whoop, this way. And then catching his wrists. And the key thing is to catch his wrists. So it's like, whoa, okay. This is the pressure point control on the wrist. I'm keeping one hand close, so I'm not trying to pull both hands back. See, if I try to pull both hands towards me, now it's equal fight. So he's going to resist me. So I go one forward, one back. Unbalancing him, and then the next thing I'm going to do is just tread on his foot. I'm going to kick him, but I'm too close to kick him. Everyone knows I'm too close to kick him. I can't possibly kick him because I'm too close to kick him. Well, I'm not supposed to kick him. This is a knee strike. It doesn't become a kick until after it's hit as a knee strike. So you notice the first thing it does is it comes up. Whoa. Control the foot, come up into the body, or depending into the leg, depends on your height relative to your opponent, into the body. And then I kicked his back leg after I kneed him in the body. Boom, boom. Now see where his head is? The next thing I'm supposed to do is what we call gait umbrae, which can be here, can be here. So the motion, which was cross step, kick, punch, okay? From here, cross step, kick, punch, becomes, whoop. Now, I'm just doing this as a touch. This can also be, boom, a kick, kick, kick. So you get that knee-foot combination. Then from here, either strike into the head or back of the arm for an arm lock. And then finishing, if you go into the head, you usually will finish with a punch. And the way you'll do that is from here, you'll kind of rake through his head that way and then punch into the back of his head. If you do here, probably you're going to skip the reverse punch completely. And but what you might do is go, so the next movement is here. You might take this way and drop. And this becomes what looks like a strike out is actually an elbow that moves this direction back. Come over here and I can. So we go 1, 2, boom, 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 strike. And then the backwards pulling motion and the strike is actually, see it? It's with my upper arm into the back of his head, that way. Okay. Now this takes us kind of through those sequences towards the end of the kata. And this movement, this thing at the end. So let me show you what that's about. Again, this is, guy's grabbing you. And as he's grabbing, hit him, create distraction. But mostly what I want to do is I want to kick him really hard because I want to stretch him out. Now I'm actually going to do this left-handed instead of right-handed because of which leg he's got forward. So I kick him right here really hard to stretch him out. And I come off of that with a punch, face, neck. This is mostly just to make sure that the rest of it I can do without really trying. Then I'm going to grab his head, and I pull his head in real close. But what I want to do is I want to lay his elbow. Okay? I want to get his shoulder on my leg. Shoulder's on my leg. Now as I twist, he's able to resist me because he's pressing against my thigh. So I have to take my thigh away. So there's a moment when I create pressure, his shoulder on my thigh, and then I remove it and twist to create the torque on his neck. So to do that again, grab. Do me a favor, this time grab with the other leg forward so I can do the other side. So the kick is to stretch him out. Boom. Punch, soften him up. Take his head, pull him right in tight. And I want to get him, this is the anticipation part of the program. He knows what's coming. So I get him so that this part of his leg, my leg is up against this part of his shoulder and stuff. So he's, as I press down on his head and lift on his jaw, he can resist me. He's actually resisting with his muscle. So I take it away to wrench his neck. All right, so Seichin begins the same. Well, they all begin with this. But why have the same interpretation for each one? So let's do a different interpretation. Let's say a guy is wagging his finger into your face. He's doing that, you're this, you're that. Now, here's the thing. If you grab his finger, great. But what happens is when you go to grab his finger, he pulls it out. See, before you can grab his finger, you have to control his hand. So the form, this is the hand that represents grabbing the finger. This is the hand that controls his hand. So you don't actually grab his finger, you actually do this. So it's not me trying to catch his finger. What I'm going to do is I bring his hand into my hand. Then the next thing you do is you bring this, see in the form you go like this and bring it in towards your chest and down. So I go here, in towards my chest and down. Now the next part of the motion is to step over sideways, this way. So let me give you a little bit of different angle on this so you can see. So he's wagging his finger in his face. He's going, you dirty so-and-so, what's the matter? I go, oh. And then I step over, the next thing to do. And as your hands part, I'm going to bring his elbow up over here, close to my body. And I've got this pin, I've got his palm actually pinned against my leg. So I push in and crank. This is in towards my body. And this is just a controlling technique. It's just a kind of a, again, both of these forms, I'm beginning with a fairly low grade kind of response to a situation, not getting too carried away, just a little something to go, hey buddy, that's it. At which point you might just, you know, kind of toss him down and leave. And then it gets a little dicey from there. Similar to something we did before, if a guy's grabbing, if I step into him as he's grabbing onto me, he's grabbing my clothing, kind of pulling me in. If I turn sideways, if we fight here, then we're in a wrestling match. If he pulls me in and I rotate, see what this has done with this arm? It's actually crossed it into his center line, which has weakened him. Now, all that I have to do is ask myself, how can I create a lot of control of his body? There's two ways I can do that. One way is I can just take this hand and hit right there. And the other way is as he pulls me in, I actually cross this leg so that I create that kind of unbalancing. Now to keep him from stepping out, which is what he wants to do, is I'm going to bring this hand up here just to kind of hold. See? And now at this point, this is where I am by the way, as he starts to come out, just pop him low just to kind of get his attention and then come in with a low strike. It could be groin. If you fold him over and you get his head, you come this way. So this motion here is back of his head. Motions like motions this way with the hands. If I come in and cross him here this way, and then when you do two hands, it means either hand. So I can just leave this hand here and strike up with my, and again, this is way up in my forearm, tap up here. And then when you come down, just control his body. Now again, if my stance is here, I've got him, he's in this really awkward position. Now at this point what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick out this leg with a step. I'm going to not do the rest of this motion. I'm just going to stop here and then take this leg just to kind of sprawl him that way. So that becomes 1, 2, and then into the next step. And I just use my shin to kind of plow his leg out of the way. If he grabs me here, this way, two-hand grab, if I come bring my hands up like this and I bring my hand out, now I've got control over this arm. And so I can do a couple of different things. I can take this one, control it here, and now I'm going to take his head, and he's turning in anticipation because I actually want to turn him this way. So I'm kind of spreading him this way. I can also do it this way. Watch this. Come up like this, grab right here. And then you're going to press on the back of his hand this way. See, I've got two-way action. Notice where his head went? And the last part of the motion, the hands coming apart, you hit him as his head goes by you. So it's 1, 2. See, there's his head. And so this is when I step and strike that way. Okay, so sometimes a person will push this way, in which case this kind of a motion here just brings their head down. Now notice where his head is. The movement of the form from this position is 1, 2. Okay, I bring him down. So first my hands go this way, which is the back of his head and his forehead. And then after I do that, I come this way. And then I come. So you're not going to use all three of those. You kind of use any one of those. So after you bring him down, you can take him here, you can take him here, or you can do this initial motion, which is there. Or there's actually one more. I need you over here for this, though. Because the third time I do this motion, this sequence, I go 1, 2, 3. So that's my third option. Again, he's pushing, I catch him here, whoa, bring him down like this. This is my double block thing. This motion right here. See, you just, and you have a yin hand and a yang hand. And there's a couple of options. You can hit both sides of the head equal. You can come down, say at the temple, come up here under the triple warmer, or small intestine meridian, this way. Or you can just hit him. See, that's the great thing about this. I can just hit him, and this is a good technique. If I aim for the pressure points, it's a better technique. If I create a little bit of motion, that's just pressure, not hitting. I want you to kind of see the reaction in his face when I get to do that, because it doesn't feel good. So I'm just catching, I'm in the temple on the triple warmer meridian. I'm going to go down that way. You can see that reaction in his face. And then I add pressure down here on the small intestine point, small intestine 17. And this is just pressure. Now imagine I'm not pressing, but I'm going and actually hitting through that. You get a good response there. The common explanation, it's not entirely stupid actually, for this motion right here, has been that someone is reaching around grabbing you. Your hands are kind of trapped, and what you do is you zip down their sternum to create some distance, and then pop with your elbow. What I was taught initially was that, in fact, what's happening is when you hit the solar plexus, the angle and direction for the solar plexus is 45 down. So as you go to punch somebody in the solar plexus, to make sure you get the right direction, you pop your hand on top at the end. So you push your hand down to try to get that 45 down angle. And what that does is that causes, and especially if the guy's like grabbing and you go here, see how his head comes down for this, and this becomes then a strike up followed by an elbow in. So it's not elbow to the head, it's punch, elbow to the chest. So the motion, and it's important to get this part right, because a lot of people see this and they think, oh, you're going like that, and you're not. Even if you have this hand back here, this is going to be a hit to the head, the elbow follows, so you're going to go here, that way you get tap, boom. So the feeling is the elbow's into the chest, the fist hits into the face, can hit up, can hit forward into the eye. So you have this kind of sequence of fold the guy down, strike into the face, and then pop into the elbow. When we start doing these motions over here, it's not about blocking. There's a couple of good ways to apply it. One way is there's this concept of muchimi, which is something maybe this guy grabs and he goes to throw a punch, and I go, oh crap, this is me getting out of the way. But once I'm out of the way, what I want to do is suppress it and strike. So what I'm doing is I'm using, this is especially if he's a little bit stronger, and I'm kind of, but I want to come over this technique. So I go this way, okay? And hitting either here or here into the face. Now, normally what I do with this, though, is I treat it this way. The form says I go to a 45-degree angle. So I work off the assumption that I've been grabbed, a cross-hand grab. And again, why would that happen? Is because I'm trying to draw a weapon. Go to draw a weapon, he goes to stop me. So I come over here, 45-degree angle. This motion here, in the form, this represents me pinning, that's his hand. So this is what's called a tell. It tells me that I have to trap his hand. And then I'm going to try, I get a feeling like I'm reaching my knuckle right over here onto a small intestine point, small intestine 5, like that. Now what you have to understand is that the form goes 1, 2. And what this is the action, this is the setup. The technique is actually in the middle. And it's helpful to see that in this one in particular because the technique is always in the middle. It's never in the postures. So this is me getting ready. It's actually between this move and the next move. That's the technique that drops him down. Now at the same time as I drop him down, I need to take a little bit of additional action. So I'm just going to kind of come in and control his leg. And what I've done is I've actually stepped on his foot. So he grabs, I come here, as he goes down, I can step right on his ankle this way, or there's a couple variations of this. You go here, and come in here this way, and what I do is I bumped and controlled his leg at that point. You can also, as you go to control this, you can just step on the foot and pull tight this way so he doesn't go anywhere, and then finish with a strike, which is sort of that ending motion. This action, anytime you step back this way, what I take that to be is guy is pushing or controlling me, he's kind of driving me back. That's why I'm stepping back. So I step back here and just control his body this way. The key thing, though, is not what this arm is doing, but what I do with my other arm. So as he pushes me, notice the first thing I do is I try to suppress his hands. It's catching a finger that's going to allow me to control his body. It can be either hand, so I can catch that outside hand, or I can take the near hand. And the rest of this is just kind of stretch him out, just kind of control him. And then, of course, that can be hitting him to finish him off. But primarily when you step away, it assumes that the reason you step away from somebody is they're pushing you. See? And as he pushes me forward, the motion of just moving sideways allows his energy to go past. It creates a lot of interesting options for you coders. Okay, push, push. Yep. All right, so this is just step back, gate on bri, down block. You'll notice at no point have I even assumed that this guy's kicking me and I'm trying to block the kick, because that's just dumb. If I go off of that same premise that he's pushing and move out of the way, I can pass him here. See what I've done? I've extended him, stretched him out, a little pop just for good measure. And then from here, I'm going to fold his arm this way and step into him and hit him with his own hand. Stop hitting yourself with your own fist. Then I'm going to rotate. I'm going to position myself just a little differently here so you can kind of see this. I'm going to turn into him here. And that's what, notice how he's falling and his weight falls on his own wrist. So here's what I just did. I just went 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So again, let's take it from this side. I pass this, strike, fold this back into him, stop hitting yourself in the head. Then I turn this way. You see this pressure right here? And what I really want, notice I'm dropping my weight, but what I really want to have happen is he falls under the weight of his own wrist. Another thing you can do, the guy comes in, he's pushing, you pass right here and get this in this position right here. So now what I'm going to do is this motion like this, only look where I am. This hand is going to come this way. This hand is going to catch up here on the gallbladder meridian that way. Okay, so boom. This becomes a hit. Anytime your hands pass in the middle like that, you can use that for hitting. And so it's high and low, which is very disorienting for a body. It's very hard for a body to know what to do when it's getting hit from the top and the bottom and the front and the back all at the same time. This motion right here, there's a point on the side of the neck that's sometimes taught in law enforcement circles, and for what they call a, what do they call this, a carotid stun or something. And it's right located about even with the Adam's apples in the muscle. The thing is, it doesn't work. And so the guy grabs me and I'm going to hit him. So I take my forearm and I bang him. Don't stretch your neck for me, okay? Okay? It doesn't work. What I have to do is I have to push with one hand, strike with the other. So I need I'm going to use the point on both sides. Large intestine 18, it's called. I'm going to use large intestine 18 on both sides. With one hand, I'm going to push this way. So I get this little flexing. So that's my yin hand, and then with my yang hand, I'm going to strike. So he grabs on. I press with one hand, strike with the other. Yeah. Okay? Then from here, after you, boom, do that, the second shot will come, because this is a metal point, the second shot comes right up into the eyebrow ridge. The point is an extraordinary point right at the top of the eyebrow ridge. It's actually, the name is Yu Yao in Chinese. And it's the supraorbital nerve. And this is where it actually comes out of the skull, so it's called a foramen. And you tap up into that. So you end up with this 1, 2. Okay? All right, so the next technique goes here. 1, 2, 3. Really, you only need this much of it. So there's a couple rules you have to know for this to work. Rule number 1, this could be maybe a two-hand grab or something. What I'm going to do is, this hand, the hand that comes to my body, strikes here. This hand is going to punch up. It's going to punch up on the stomach meridian point. But the thing is, because our gender is the same, if I stand like this and then punch up, the effect is a little bit not as good because we're the same gender. What I should do is a palm strike, or I should have my heel up. So the method is actually that you hit here and punch here before your heel touches down. So your heel should still be up at the moment of impact. Once you hit up, the neck is stretched. So if I do it on this side, you can see this. The neck stretches, and the stretched neck right there exposes the stomach meridian. So I punch up, and then I strike down. So it's a relatively, there, see? You get that bump, bump. And it's not even, doesn't even have to be a very big or heavy shot. However, if you go 1, 2, and the guy's still standing, that's when you can start adding, finishing technique, which is an elbow and then a groin strike. And, a lot of people go, oh, you pressure point people never go for the groin. Yeah, we go for the groin all the time. It's a great target. But before I get there, I'm going to hit something else. So the technique can become 1, 2, elbow, groin. This motion right here, towards the end of the form, one of the ways to deal with it, anytime somebody grabs you, this is what you have to worry about, but this is what you have to play with, because this isn't going anyplace. So I always know where this is. So if it's going after his head, he can move his head. If I'm trying to catch his fist, he can be, but this arm's not going anywhere. So one of the things you can do is you can actually start working with this arm. And one of the best ways to do that, from this side it looks like this. I'm going to catch it with both hands like this. And if he grabs on the other side, see, I'm going to go this way. And what I'm going to do is put my elbow, so my elbow strikes into his arm, like that. See how that unbalances him? And this becomes really the setup for something else, which could be just a quick elbow, could be a strike up, a shot that way. Could be when you get to the end of the form, it goes like this. So that means that I could be going here, 1, boom, here, this way, and then as his body reacts to that, punch, and then strike. A lot of times when people are grabbed, what they want to do is they want to go like this, because it's a great joint technique. However, what's he doing the whole time I'm going like this? He's hitting me in the head. So I need to find a way to neutralize that arm. And again, that's part of the advantage of this kind of a technique, because it neutralizes that arm in a way that you don't expect. I take this arm out, and that shortens up this motion. It also keeps my shoulder in the way. His body gets all hinged up, and now I have a little bit of time to go like this and to kind of move into the joint sequence. This works even easier if it's a two-hand grab, because then you just go over the top hand. Go over the top hand so it's trapped. Strike the back hand. Come this way, and then you're locked. Now from here, I'm going to step forward. And I've got him kind of pinned here. Large intestine 10 is right here. So if I take my elbow and drop it on large intestine 10, I don't know if you heard that noise, but that's what happens. You get this very painful technique. So this motion here, this motion, right, this one that looks like everyone thinks, oh, you're doing that. Well, if I'm working with a manipulated joint this way, when I come over the top, I'm actually bringing my elbow down. And the hit is a kind of after effect. Now, in practice, a lot of times we go 1, 2, like that. But the real idea is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand past his head rather than in it, so that the elbow hits here, joint lock, elbow hit, and a hit to the face all simultaneously. But that's hard to do safely unless you put like a big padding thing on somebody's head. Because this is large intestine, this strike can go into stomach, because large intestine feeds energy into the stomach meridian. So when I affect the large intestine, I affect the stomach meridian. Again, you see fairly big body responses to fairly light touches, and understand that if your intent is full on, you're then even if you miss the point, you're going to hurt the guy. The last technique of the form, which is step back and you kind of do this motion this way. This is almost not what is expected, because what's happening is you want to bring, as I bring my elbows up and in, I control his arm. The key thing is I got him. What I'm doing is I'm controlling his wrist and his hand here. So this is really important that I close, it's called closing the armpit, because this allows me to control his arm with my elbows. Then what I'm going to do is use a large intestine meridian point. It's halfway in the middle of the arm, just slightly to the outside of the arm. So I bring up here to kind of control the wrist, and then I'm just going to pop down, striking those points. And as I strike those points, I'm just going to grind across them this way, and see what it does. How his face comes down towards my hands. So what that means is, as I do this motion, my fingers are pointing towards his jaw. And we actually have film of Tatsuo showing this application, so we know this is the quote-unquote official technique. What you do is you strike large intestine 7 and then double palm up into stomach 5. Now the thing is that when you palm stomach 5, that's not shown in the form. The form does this and ends with your fingers pointing towards stomach 5. It actually points where you're going to hit. So it points where you're going to hit, but it doesn't show the hit. So that's one of the things that forms will sometimes do, is they'll leave out a little piece, and that's the piece that's left out in this form. It leaves out that final hit.